Now, earlier this week, Mary Portas and her wife Melanie Rickey made headlines when she announced that their son Horatio was fathered by a sperm donation from Mary's brother Lawrence. Obviously, there's no question of any genetic problem for the child. It was Melanie who became pregnant and carried the child to term, so why should any squeamishness be expressed about the idea? There was quite a bit of it. Well, how common is it for a brother or sister to donate sperm or eggs? Why do people ask for it? And how does a couple plus one work out how to be parents to the child? Well, Laura Vitgens is Chief Executive of the National Gamete Donation Trust. Eleanor and Alice are sisters. Earlier this morning, I asked Eleanor how difficult it was to ask her sister to donate eggs.
It was quite a major thing to embark upon, not least because actually I hadn't let on the full extent to which we were struggling. We had, for 7 years I think it was, that we had been trying to achieve pregnancy on our own and then later on with help. And at the time that I did speak to her, I was actually pregnant. But the last scan, it was early days and the scan hadn't been all that rosy. And so I began to shift my way of thinking.
So Alice, what was your reaction when Eleanor began to tell you the troubles she'd had?
It wasn't a huge surprise because I sort of had figured out that she'd been trying and I was, ready to support her and thought maybe she had been trying IVF. But then when she brought about this concept and the idea of me donating, it was a surprise because I hadn't heard of it before. So it was a lot for me to think about. But my initial reaction was a yes, and the more I found out, it stayed a yes for me.
Now, Eleanor, you did miscarry on that occasion.
Yes.
Why then, when you were going to try again, did you think it would be important to try and keep it in the family rather than seeking another anonymous donor?
Well, I would have been prepared to turn to an anonymous donor if that's the way we needed to go. The way it came about was really because actually one time, quite a long time before, I attended a support group, and there I met somebody who was very happy because her sister had just agreed to donate her eggs. That was actually fairly early on in my IVF treatment and journey, but I stored that one.
Hadn't your grandmother planted some sort of idea into your head as well?
Well, my grandmother helped me enormously. I was very uneasy with the whole question of just even IVF at all. One should perhaps accept one's lot and be happy with it, and all of that was coming into my thinking. But then she was in her 90s, and I occasionally would go and see her and talk to her. She was the only one in my family who dared to broach the topic of the fact that she would love a little bubba. And I remember she took her hands in mine and she said that there's a lot that can be done these days to help.
What was it like, Alice, for you to make the final decision? Because it does mean invasive treatments for the donor.
It does, but I don't think there was ever a final decision. We went to a group meeting, something called DCN, Donor Conception Network, for the day, and had talks and then had groups, and that sort of started for me the process of it being real and thinking about it, and each stage was the next step.
What was it like for you when you found Eleanor was pregnant?
It was, it was very exciting, but then also, like all pregnancies, a nervous time because, you find out really early with IVF because you know exactly when to check, and then you have to wait 3 months for your next sort of period to to relax a little bit, but then the pregnancy kept going. We had to wait the whole time for the baby to be born. So it was an exciting time and a relief. 3 of us had put in a lot of time and effort, and it worked first time for us, so it was an exciting achievement.
Well, let me bring Laura in now. Laura, how common is this family donation of either eggs or sperm?
It's a lot more common than people realise, and as Ellie already said, everybody dreams to be pregnant the normal way, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And using a family member actually makes perfect sense to me. There is a shortage of eggs and sperm, and whilst there has been an increase, there is still a shortage. And a lot of people actually prefer to keep it in a family as well, to keep the genes in the family. And we also see with egg donors especially, it is an invasive procedure, but they can understand it more for either their sister or their best friend. So they would do something for them which they wouldn't necessarily do for somebody else.
Now, why do you suppose the Portas story caused a bit of a scandal in the newspapers? I mean, yes, she has a genetic connection to the child because of her brother, but no danger of causing any kind of incestuous problems because she didn't bear the child. It wasn't her egg.
It is really interesting, but you see the difference between egg and sperm donation in any case. Egg donations is seen as something wonderful and sperm donation is seen as something smutty, but it is in itself exactly the same. A sister donates for a sister and a brother donates for a brother, or in this case a sister. I do think that the visualization of the process and the thought that sperm enters into somebody else's body, although clearly that's not the case, it happens in a petri dish, but I think that's part of it, the whole squeamishness of sperm donation, full stop.
What sort of problems can arise once the baby comes and you've got a couple and then somebody else who may have parental interest in that child?
I'm not sure we should call them problems, but there will be different challenges. There is a difference to it. People don't want to think about it, but relations do sometimes break down. It's just being mindful of them if there's a disagreement. But most cases like this do actually turn out well, if people at least have had time to think about the implications long term.
Alice, what was it like for you when Martha was born?
It was very exciting. I became an aunt. My parents became grandparents, and what we'd been working for actually happened. And now, 2 years on, you know, she's a person in her own right. It's just been a joy to get to know her.
But how do you really regard her now? Is she your niece, or is she your daughter?
Oh no, she's my niece. She's definitely my niece. She's a special niece, but all nieces are special, I think. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud to be her aunt, and I'm proud to have helped my sister and her husband achieve her.
Eleanor, she's nearly 2 now.
Yeah.
Has your sister ever once interfered?
Absolutely not. And the interfering that she does is positive and welcome, because, of course, like any new mum, a little bit of help is always welcome. So, no, it's... and I am really perhaps lucky, but fully 100% confident that this is the way that we are going to stay.
And when is Martha going to know about her genetic history?
Well, we're reading a book already to her that she's really loving. When she starts understanding it, who knows? But it's a book that is published by the Donor Conception Network that we've already mentioned. It's called Our Story, and it is not specifically written for sisters, but for egg donors, and it's one of her favourite books, and it's celebrating the love and the happiness of her birth.
I was talking to Eleanor and Alice and Laura Wittgens.